morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to this edition of the Tuesday Telecast, where we're going to talk about rising from self-destruction. What a topic. And I don't know where it's going to go, but we have not a full round table today. We have a coffee table chat, and it's going to be very intimate. So I welcome you to the conversation, and let's go bring Joy Brooks and Dr. Maria Ian into the house. Hello, Joy, and hello, Maria, and really great to have you on the show. We're going to talk about rising from self-destruction and have a have a coffee table chat about it. And I'm really pleased to have you here. So please introduce yourselves before we get started and just let everybody know not your whole life story, but why you're here.
Maria, you go ahead first.
Okay. Well, I'm Maria Ian, and I am an author and a writing coach, and I'm also a science writer and researcher. And I'm here because this topic is absolutely, I think it's the current topic, because we are living in an era, if you look at it, where about every person of note, about anyone who is really determining the world that we live in, has, in a way or another, committed suicide. I mean, not physically killed themselves, but has done things that are self-destructive in a very big way. And I wrote a book on longevity a couple of years ago. And one of the observations I started with is precisely what I just said, which is that we're living in an area where human beings act against themselves, act against their better interests, or if you want to put it in a different way, cannot deal with freedom very well. I think it's at its foundation a freedom issue. Like if you give somebody all freedom in the world and all money in the world, right, you would think they'll do something that's amazing for humanity. But I mean, pretty much any person that makes decisions in today's world that affect millions of people has used their freedom in a very self-destructive way. And if you're looking at it rationally, you say, okay, well, look at it rationally. It's not even in those people's interest to do that, right? Well, then why are they doing it? Well, they are still doing it. They're basically destroying themselves, and in the process, destroying many other things.
Yeah. Definitely have some thoughts on how that happens and the idea of freedom. Yeah, Joy, what are you here for?
What am I here for?
Yeah.
So I'm semi-retired, which gives me a whole lot of time to sit and think about lots of things. And I enjoy reading a lot and thinking about things and listening to streaming podcasts and lots of different content. But I've always been pretty introspective in my life, and I've always attempted to do it myself, always, like figure it out, what's wrong, gotta fix it. All right. So when I first started to be a solopreneur, which was back around 2000, I was looking for a domain, and I found the Flying Dragon, and dragons like Phoenix rise from the ashes.
Mm.
And so that was very meaningful for me because I've done that so many times that, I fall down, hurt myself real bad, and get up and try not to do it again. Although it happens, you do it again, you do it again. And it's inevitable. I think that's the human condition, but I don't think
Mhm.
that we need to give up. We really need to attempt to take that freedom that we have and not for granted and use it for good. I mean, it would be a wonderful thing if we could understand this, but it's so difficult. Children don't understand it because they're immortal. I'm sorry. When you're a kid, you have no concept of death. You think, you can do whatever you can do just because you could do it. And, you go a million miles an hour doing whatever it is until you hit a point where you're like, oh, this isn't working. And unfortunately, some kids don't make it, right? And then some
Sure.
adults are still doing the wrong things because maybe they weren't going a million miles an hour, but maybe they were going half a million miles an hour. And they're still thinking, I could do this.
Right. And I think it comes down to what is the wrong thing? What is the right thing? And how do you determine? To me, I don't believe in right and wrong. I just believe that there is what there is. And some things, I guess you'd call it wrong when it's self-destructive, when it doesn't make it toward the end goal that we want to have or the ethos that we want to have. And certainly smashing yourself into a tree or running yourself over a bridge is, if you plan on going on after that, it puts a damper in the works, so that's my thought of.
There are habits that are self-destructive, and like, oh, smoking, it makes me look cool. Really? Right? And then, it escalates. It escalates.
Yeah.
Drinking. Oh, it relaxes me. Right? Doing drugs.
It's all self-medicating. And so I wonder how much of we're talking in the ego, the more the person in the case of Joy, and we're talking more in the case of the people and the society. And I think of also the fact that humanity, if you look back, actually you can't look back easily in our lifetime, but if you look at what we know, humanity, every 65,000 years, first of all, the planet reinvents itself or something around that, right? And then humanity itself does that on a shorter scale, but it's still too little for or too much for us to actually see. So why do we do that? Because when we reinvent ourselves, do we really have this idea that we should destroy ourselves and then come back as a phoenix? Doesn't seem so. That
No.
not human level.
No, I think it has a lot to do with the fear of death. I think that's something that fascinates me. I think any creation, any great creation, I think we humans are so constituted as to not be able to deal with our freedom very well. I think we have, by creation, by nature, we are boundless. Like Joy had said, children, think everything is infinite. But the reason why we at some point stop thinking that is not because we are not infinite, is because we get programmed, and I'm sure you know that, because we get programmed to think that we are finite, which is wrong, which is an untruth, because we are infinite. And so much that we creators, that we artists, we thinkers do is to unprogram ourselves, or to at least be able to work with those programs that we must have to live in this world as humans with flesh and bones and finite physical being, right, in such a way that we can still create And to answer Lydia's question, I think that's the why is because humans, it's not in our daily education. We are not taught that as in schools today. We are not taught that by the media. We are not taught that, by popular culture. We are not taught how to live with those programs that we must have, because we are finite. I mean, we are infinite by nature, but in this reality that we inhabit, we are finite. We have flesh and bones and a body that we cannot discard, because we have to go through our evolution. We have to complete the cycle of our life, right? But we are not taught and not trained how to live with that finitude that we must have, right? Instead, we get entangled with those finite aspects of our existence that are the fake, the unreal, the damaging programs.
You are
Right?
bringing up
Yes.
a conflict that comes up in this audio room or in this podcast a lot, and that's the butting of heads of human centricity and system centricity. And our humans are exactly as you say, when we're little, we're boundless, where things are infinite, and the other thing is, we don't really get hurt. All adults say, oh, you're going to get hurt. But if we stay out of it and let a kid who wants to walk, they will fall down, and they'll cry for just a nanosecond, and then they'll get up and they'll do it again, and they'll sometimes they'll bash their heads, and then they get up and they do it again, because they're so purpose driven. They don't worry about all of this. They just say, I want to be in this infinite space. And then all of a sudden, the next thing they want to learn is to be like us, and we're all limited. Getting into the system. But the fact is, when we're born, we're part of a system, right? We're part of nature. We're part of the earth, which has a natural feedback. And it's just these systems that we've set around ourselves that don't work for everyone. Some people, more of them work than others. But if we have that little bit that doesn't work, we're going to say, well, I'm going to pretend it does work, and I'm going to mask my feelings, or I'm going to self-medicate my feelings, because this part of this system doesn't work. This thing I was taught in school, this thing that how I need to show up in society. Nope. Nobody's worried about how they show up in society when they're born, and nobody in other societies looks at how they're going to show up. They look at, here's my task is to take care of my young. Here's my task is to bring back food. Is to protect the pack. But we seem to think that we need to keep up with the Joneses and all of these ideas that are, like you're saying, Maria, they're not right. They're not real, and we're not shown how to do that. We just say conform.
Yeah, I want to give an example, because we mentioned editing at the beginning. When I had one of the first things I really wanted to do right in my life, right? But I really wanted to do well, is I wanted to be an audio engineer. And this was in the early 90s when MIDI first came out, right? So there were there were two schools teaching MIDI in New York City. And I was like, I have to learn that, because I want to be an audio engineer. And I had all this music. I had this tune in my head that I wanted to realize, right? So I'm taking this class, and of course you have to start with the basics. And I'm taking the basics MIDI class, it's about 2 semesters. And then after that, you got to advance to the advanced audio engineering class, where you then actually could graduate at some point and be a professional in audio engineering. And I did extremely well on editing and on some reverb stuff that I was mixing, right? So I did really well. And then it's like, okay, now you got to meet with a counselor and decide you're going to advance to take the prof. And this was just two schools in New York City teaching this, right? MIDI just came out. So this is like a very big thing. This is a real opportunity. So when I'm planning, okay, I got to go now and register for this advanced audio engineering class. No, can't do that, because all these things suddenly fall into place in my mind, all these reasons why it's not going to work. And I'm not even going to mention them because they are, very sensitive political reasons that I don't even want to put them out there right now. But all these social, cultural reasons as to why, no, right? So today, again, my new venture is I'm producing my own audiobooks, right? And I went back to the early 90s, and I'm thinking, boy, if I had that advanced audio engineering class, I would have saved myself these past few months a lot of time and quite some money, that I had to spend on learning what I would have learned back then had I taken that class. And maybe I would have started my audiobooks much sooner than in 2024, which would have been really good for me, right? But I think that we humans, unless we are taught, or unless we have the ability to listen and take in the right knowledge and be taught the right things, how to work with these necessary, natural limitations that we must have, unless, and again, we are not taught that in society. Culture doesn't teach us that. This particular world that we live in, like Lydia was saying earlier, it does not teach us that, right? We are going to shut down, and I've seen that happen to many, many, many people, shut down then when we should expand. I've seen it happen, so often. And that's why we have so few really successful people. That's why we have so few, really well-functioning people. Because, then luck comes in. Okay, well, you were lucky. That's why you made it, quote unquote, right? But no, you don't have to be lucky. You can learn, you can teach yourself how to not shut down then when it's really in your interest, in your favor to expand. But people do that. That's a conversation we're having. I was just going to say, well, we can have a whole conversation on that, but we are actually having that conversation now.
Yeah.
But we do that. We shut down then when we should be opening. Yeah.
I think that somebody said to me the other day, what would you rather have, fame or wealth? And I said, neither.
Right.
Those are meaningless to me.
Mm.
And even though all these things are not taught to us in school, these are life experiences that we need to open our eyes to, because everyone gets a chance to experiment with their own personality, their own opportunity. But what they aren't taught, I'm just going to use the term critical. They're not taught to critically examine what's going on around them. They may take an easy route because it's difficult to be critical of yourself. It's difficult to say, boy, I'm just making a lot of mistakes. It's easy to say, oh, I'm just a victim of this, of the patriarchy. And therefore, it's more difficult to say, what is it that I think I'm saying that no one is hearing, and how do I say these things? What am I doing wrong? And I've said this to myself over and over and over again. I often say things like, I'm just unfiltered, and while other people are very critical of what they say, they're very intentional of what they say, they've practiced, I'm just out there blabbing my face off. And I'm thinking, but I appreciate that. That's me. I don't want to be this intentional person, so dry. So I'm like, difficult. These are difficult things.
Yes.
So I could say,
Yeah.
am I crashing and burning again? Because I'm not ever going to get that opportunity that someone else will. I'm thinking, no, that's not my opportunity.
No,
Mhm.
there are billions and billions of people, and if we think that our purpose on life is to be in life is to be self-critical and to be precise and to be our purpose, the reason we're here, and we might as well enjoy it, is to be. And if the way
Mhm.
things are around us aren't right, aren't right, then we have to be a different way. And so all of a sudden we go through this, whether our background is saying you need to be more this or more that, we will respond to it. And how we respond, we might cower, we might push. I think this brings up the idea of freedom, as this is
Mhm.
something that I really strongly believe that more humans than not, think they'd like to be free, and more humans than not are afraid of it when they get true
Yeah,
freedom,
exactly. Yes.
because
Yeah.
we have been butting up against these barriers our whole lives. I mean, just even from the toddler learning how to walk is falling over and falling over and falling over, and they get past that barrier. But then we go on to the next barrier, and we either grow to like our barriers and, cuddle up to them, or we beat against them our whole lives, or whatever. We are bedfellows with these barriers. And when you suddenly say, it's like, I teach free improvisation. This is kind of
Mhm.
improvisation, right? Well, people are scared to death of free improvisation,
Yes.
even if
Oh,
they know.
Yes.
I wouldn't be able to do it. That would scare that really does scare me.
But there you go. See what you just said? See what you just said? That's
Oh,
not
that
true. You would be able
definitely
to do it.
scares me. I can't let, I mean, there are a lot of people that are in the room and they're doing, oh, let's pretend we're butterflies. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I look like an
Right, well,
idiot
that's the
on a
thing, is there's
butterfly.
the intention and there's we're not, to be free is that state of just being. It's not, you're not actually free if you think I need to perform this, because then we go out and we say, I need to perform this free thing. And I'm used to having parameters to my performance and I have none. So I'm
Mhm.
not going to be up to performance level. That's not freedom.
Yep. Yes, I love that. I love what you just said. I love what you just said, because that's exactly when the barrier comes in. You know, when you are when you are free, we I love what you said earlier with being, to being. There's a lot of, there's freedom in being. You know, you have to have your skill set together and then let it flow, you know,
Yeah.
and that is freedom. And but that,
Right.
yeah.
But
Doesn't
wouldn't that,
matter what we're free at, just as long as we're not hampered. We don't have to be that person that successful person
For
or
each
that wealthy person.
individually, for each individually, each individual needs to have their own, their own particular skill set that works best for their psyche, that makes
that's
them
knowing our
whole.
boundaries, knowing our
Yes.
boundaries. Okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Knowing
Mhm.
I am a singer as
Mhm.
opposed to a dancer, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Otherwise, trying to sing when you are a dancer and never becoming that dancer.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
if you really want to, if you just say, I'm an excellent dancer, I've loved dancing, but I am done with this. I want to become an architect. I want to become a singer. We're going to have to go through those falling down toddler steps again.
Yeah.
And
But
that's
if we,
okay, as long as we are not worried about what anybody else thinks about us, but that doesn't tend to be how we're like.
Mhm.
Maria said, those skills, and I like to call it the toolbox. It's like you
Good.
have this toolbox and it works for a bunch of different things.
Mhm.
You just carry it around with you, whether it's a fight with your husband, or it's a new job, or you moving to a new place, or you're deciding, you know what, I'm going to become a gypsy. I'm just going to keep on traveling.
Yeah.
I'm not going to settle down. Whatever it is, that toolbox goes with you. It's yours. No one can take it from you.
But you can add tricks to it. So
And you can add more tools.
You can add more tools. You can add tricks. You can add, parlor magic. You can do whatever. And we do.
Here's the hardcore thing. So we're talking all about we're limitless but we're restrained by the body. And what happens when the body or the mind plays tricks with us and we are hampered? We cannot do what we want to do. For those of us, we are all getting older. For those of us as we get older and we realize there's less in front of us than there is in behind us and all of these things, we have to make some of these very hard decisions about our lives. All of those lessons of rising out of the ashes, of being self-destructive, but now we really do need to take care of ourselves in some way, shape, and form.
Yeah.
It's quite humbling.
But I've got examples. I mean, I've got several examples of individuals but see, again, they did not live in this society that we three today speak in today on this Zoom call. But they learned from falling down. I think if you're looking at your life as like a continuum, right? And then you start getting programmed and you start getting afraid because you start understanding I'm going to do certain things wrong. I have to be careful. I have to be overly critical. I have to do all those analytical, blah, blah things. But the examples I'm thinking of right now is people who then used that knowledge, that life experience, to conclude that what that teaches me is I really have nothing to lose. I'm sort of getting younger as I'm getting older, because
Right.
Right.
You really don't have anything to lose.
Yeah.
You really don't. I mean, aside from going to Vegas and throwing your money away, you really
that's
you don't have anything to lose.
Right. Yeah.
Well, you're going to bring that money with you to the grave. I mean,
right. But, I'm saying that the concept really is that if you've discovered a passion that is different than yesterday's, and you're thinking, oh, where did this come from? I need to pivot. And in a big way. Is it a marriage? Is it a career? Is it, do you need to get up and move? Have you made friends with the wrong people? And suddenly, oh my goodness, these people around me are just holding me back. These are big things that are very scary, but the options of treading water forever, just to tread water, just to maintain.
Yeah, no, we respond in some way. We're not going to tend to just survive by treading water. We're going to respond in some way, and we're either going to go in the opposite direction from those people, those circumstances that have not served us, or we're going to push against them, or
self-destruct,
or destroy them, depending on what we're going to do something to remove that. And when it's not so bad, sometimes we let things come to the fore because we will say, well, I've survived worse than this. I can manage to keep going, and we'll keep going, and we'll keep going until all of a sudden we have physical infirmity because we're holding that stress in us, or we because of the stress, we do something like crash our car or whatever it is. There are all these feedback mechanisms when when we come to that space, is it bad? Because we learn, the sooner we learn it, the better. When we come to that space and time when we say, there are too many good things, and I choose to do these ones. And you let some good things go, and you certainly let the things that you're not aligned with, you let those go.
Mm.
What do I want to concentrate on? Whether because there's only so many hours in a day, or because I feel like, hey, I have a limited amount of time to live and I want to live it well.
That's not, you see, that's not true. We don't have a limited amount of, we don't have a limited amount of time to live, but that's just my personal injection into this conversation. I don't want to derail. I don't want to derail it, but that's not.
Explain that, because I really, I mean, obviously, we're going to live and die. So how do we where is it limitless? I really
Well,
want,
yes, well, I was going to say, Lydia mentioned alignment. I very firmly believe, it's not believe, I know that each and every human on this planet has an indestructible, eternal element within them that they're born with, and that they will carry with them far beyond their grave. It's an indestructible, eternal element that will bring us to the next reality, to the next world, to the stars, right? And the trick is to always float with that eternal, indestructible element that we have. This is what I think is a different fear that comes in. The fear that we have, that what we have within ourselves is indestructible, is eternal. And I think our limited kind of unresolved traumas and all those things are very afraid of that. So if we keep ourselves afloat, I mean, that's just my very strong personal belief. And I have observed that in people who I've seen so-called dying, like we're saying, like dying, becoming brain dead, becoming infirm and dying, what the Western medical profession refers to as death, right? Hospital, machines, dead, coffin, grave, right? And from just having seen people go through that is an illusion, that is an untruth. That is the very basic physical limited reality, focusing intentionally just on that, right?
It's the fear of the unknown.
Yes,
really
the alignment has to be with the indestructible. And yes.
I just got off of a call,
Mm.
a while ago, with someone named Felicity Warner. Now, Felicity is someone who is a death doula, and what she does is she helps people prepare for their own death. She helps people prepare to help other people with their death. She helps people to not die alone in the afraid, and thinking that this is all unpleasant, and people hooked up to hospital machines, and it's miserable, and it doesn't have to be that way on whatever level that you think. But similarly, she talks about the time before preparing for the death, that when we're calm and we know we're supported, we feel that place of it becomes a state of being, because we don't have to, if we don't know what's happening after. If some part of us knows what's happening after, we may not know anything that is happening after then, right? It doesn't matter that we know. Sometimes some people don't, that doesn't sit well with, but it doesn't matter that we know. It matters that we accept, and that we can be in a state of not, stress and fear.
No, well, we are
with this.
Yes, well, we are programmed, regretfully, in this particular society, we are programmed to think according to physical limitations. And I'm just saying this in very simple terms, and that is why we are afraid that we're going to go into the casket, we're going to go into the hospital, we're going to go to the machines, we're going to go into the brain dead, we're going to go into the casket, and it's going to be the end.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
But that's, yes, but that's just a tiny, tiny bit of our human totality. But we are programmed in this world to be in that realm, to be in that zone of finality. It's finished, it's over.
There's also
Right.
a
But
biological
it's wrong.
aspect
That's a
to it.
wrong. That's a wrong. That is not a truth.
We
You
just
know,
haven't evolved very much as well from when we have been fighting for our lives from the, you know, the lions and the tigers and whatever. We're
You
still,
sound like you read my book. You sound, that's, yes. Yeah.
so I put this all in the realm of faith, and I wrap it up and I leave it alone, because I could discuss it till the cows come home and I still come up with, I don't know. But the other day, well, two things. One, the other day I was reading a bit because I was trying to prepare a conversation on free will, right, and freedom. So I was reading a little bit about nirvana, which is it, which is the end. You don't come back. Once you reach nirvana, you have cycled through all your lives. You're done. I'm like, what? Where do you go? So we're again at that point where I have to have faith and just say, it is whatever it is. And I don't know. I don't even have the words to explain what it is. And the second thing that I wanted to share was I have fainted 4 times in my life. And each time I totally black out. I have no white light. I don't see my mother. There are no voices. There's no music. There's no God. It's just out. I'm out. Goodbye. When I come back, I'm like, what happened? What did I do? And I have no memory, none. And they're like, you've been out for 5 seconds. 5 seconds. I have no memory.
yeah. I have lots of parts of my existence that I don't have memory because of I actually did die in the hospital. It was not long, but it was long enough to actually be dead. And similarly, there wasn't a God and there wasn't a light, but there wasn't just darkness either. I felt totally held and like I was floating in this energy, and there was no words, there was no English, there was no French, there was no German, there was no Slavic.
No, I was in nothingness, and I recognized nothingness very clearly, which is what I'm saying. It's not something that our consciousness and intelligence can put words to, can put feelings to, and thereby I've said I'm not worried about it. So
you
when
can put feelings to it, but that's my experience. I felt held, and I felt like I got the message that I was going to be coming back. And part of me said, you know, oh crap, this is much nicer because what I was coming back to was a long time in the hospital, and just a lot of pain and a lot of dysfunction and a lot of vulnerability, right? And whatever it is, I said, oh, there was that part of me that felt that, oh, well, I guess I have to go with the flow, but I don't want to do this. This is much nicer. Can I please stay in bed? It was that kind of feeling. It wasn't in words, but it was a feeling of supremely being held just for a short time. And then all of a sudden I woke up in my hospital bed, and, there were dystonic reactions and things happening, and life was a struggle for a little while. It still doesn't what part of my consciousness really brought me back?
Well, well, you see,
Not your consciousness that brought you back. It's your consciousness that's telling the story. Your
Yeah.
consciousness didn't bring you back.
yeah,
And we could in all for all effective purposes say that no, my surgeon, Dr. Silva, brought me back. It had nothing to do, but we don't know these things. These are uncertain. We don't know. And if any part of us knows that we know, we don't trust it.
well, I want to say something to what exactly. I want to say something to what Joy said earlier about having no memory. You know, we think is very interesting. I had surgery when I was about 5 years old, and I wouldn't. They gave me an anesthetic, and I had to be totally out for it, and I wouldn't fall asleep for some reason. The anesthetic wasn't working,
Mm.
and it was highly unusual. And then they had to put something over my head to really knock me out because they had to do the surgery. They couldn't waste the time any longer to wait for me to go out. And when I saw that thing coming, and that whole thing, like you have to be out now because you can't just sit here and half sleep, and we can't sit here wait for you to go out. I mean, I was so afraid, like scared shitless. And I'm thinking if that same thing would happen to me today, it would be the exact same fear, the exact same. There is no life experience in between. No, I wouldn't be able to say today, okay, you had all this life experience of God knows how many decades, and you're not going to be afraid. You're just going to no, because the physical end, is the physical end. And that's where the no memory comes in. I think it's very crucial because memory happens in time. We remember things in some way within some flow of time, even if it's nonlinear time, right? But that space beyond, that is outside of all time, outside of all place, that is beyond the absolute end, that has no memory. It's exactly accurate, because it's no more time. But I just think that's a fascinating observation.
It's also
It's fascinating. Yeah.
the brain is a machine. It's firing off. It's doing a lot of these things. It's
This is not
holding
in
our
our
memories.
brain. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's holding our memories. And when the machine shuts off,
Mm-hmm.
that life doesn't. But what does? Again, that's in the realm of faith.
And
I don't know what does. I just have to think that there is something miraculous.
Yes.
I think just the idea of our mind and our mind body connection, our mind, heart, gut being like all one mind. When we go into this societal system, we start ignoring those gut feelings, right? Those gut feelings are part of our intrinsic mind. That's where how often is our gut feeling right? How many times have we stopped listening to it because someone told them, told us to? And how often do we really do well when we don't listen to our heart? It's all part of the same thing. And I think, and I don't have a memory of this, but there, when that muscle goes, that what happens to that mind, heart, gut, soul, that's
faith. I call it faith.
yeah, absolutely.
But
Because
think about this: we're not the only living creatures on this planet, right?
oh,
We're as frail, our ecosystem, and we within that ecosystem, we're all very frail, and we all depend on one another in very odd ways. And we might say we're conscious beings. Well, I don't know. Whales are conscious, dolphins are conscious, My dogs do amazing things at times. Cats, I don't know. Bugs, trees, I don't know. I do know that they're here.
Yeah,
And that's also part of the miracle.
Mm-hmm.
it
Also
is,
part of the miracle.
whether
I don't
there's
know.
life or consciousness.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't understand it. I don't need to understand it. Again, the boundary thing. I don't need
That's
to
the thing.
understand it to be able to appreciate it, to say, well, there's something here. Right?
Yeah,
How do trees communicate?
Oh.
Come on, they do.
yes,
Mm.
they do.
I
And
want to say something very interesting, going back again to memory, and miracle. Um, One of my aunts had recently died. And I firmly believe in the one indestructible element that every human has. And I firmly believe we have, and I've seen it, not only that I personally believe it for whatever idiosyncratic reason, but I've seen it in experience operate. And I believe we are created by stars and that we go home to the cycle that our stars are on once we decide on whichever level to pass on to what is after this physical limitation, right? And one of my aunts who recently died, who was very, very spiritual, like just very incredibly spiritual, and also very close to me in some ways. You know, I had after a couple of months, again speaking in human time, right, our time here and now, a couple of weeks, maybe 1 or 2 months, I felt she's arriving. She's arriving back on her star, the physical entity of the star, right? But I just felt that. I felt the flow. I felt the movement of
Yeah.
arrival, right? And then I sort of meditated on that, and I saw through a veil darkly, I saw a being that looked like her. And then I remembered memory. Oh, you're my aunt. Memory comes in. But that other reality, again, that is outside of space and time, doesn't have that limitation aspect, right? So, but that was my cognition in this limitation. Oh, right, memory, you're my aunt. I know you. I met you. We know each other. We've gone through parts of our lives together. But that's not it. You're missing the point. The point is that she is arriving, right? Or a spirit, her flow is arriving, right? So, and that's what we have to train ourselves to be like, but society doesn't teach us that, right? It doesn't teach us the
or
miracle.
to just trust it, or to just
Yeah.
go with it. If we don't, just as long as we don't fight it, I think this is like, you felt like you knew, Maria, and you
Yeah.
say that for you, you need to train yourself to recognize these things, and this brings you happiness. And
Yes.
you can tell me I'm not correct, but for Joy, she says, I don't need to know all of this. I feel it there. I have my voice inside of me, which I
No, but
believe I listen to, because
every
that
human has
voice,
to train themselves. Every human has to train themselves because
or
every human is programmed.
how
They are
they
programmed by
how they
definition. Yeah.
perceive this. And we have the ability to do whatever we want with that. We can put our head in the sand and ignore it, but that won't go very far.
So here's something interesting. We're talking about society, and I'll call it secular. And then we're talking
Yes.
about religion, and we can call it that spark. And that's what's happening here. That's the conversation we're having. The death of religion. The death of religion. So we've lived this life, and now we're involved in the secular, and we're like, religion doesn't exist anymore. That's God's ridiculous. That's stupid. That's again the patriarchy. So we're these beings that have no faith anymore.
Mm-hmm.
We're
And
living in,
right.
and like you're calling it society, we're living this secular life that's connected to nothing. The only thing it gives us is this plane, this reality. It
Yeah,
doesn't
you
give
got
us anything
exactly.
else. And so we're
Exactly.
reaching out again. And guess
Mm.
what? We're creating God again.
Yeah,
We're just
we're
calling it
because
something else.
we
It's
all,
not the first
and this is,
time.
it always was there. We were always looking for this when we were tribes in the sand and tribes in the forest and tribes along the ocean and tribes on the mountaintops. We looked for what connected us before we had words, before we
Well,
looked for
see,
what connected
here's
us to
another
that
thing.
energy. And that's how
Here's another thing.
the religions came about. But now we are saying, hey, I got to be connected to something. There are people, you're right, people look for
No,
how they are connected to this, because we are for sure
I
connected.
I don't believe, well, I don't believe in tribes, because I believe that humanity has had many civilizations that
Yeah.
have, some of them have been at a higher level of evolution than ours, including with our spaceships and God knows what else. I still believe there are some civilizations that have been at a much higher evolution than ours, but they change because there are multiple realities to existence, and different things exist in different realities. And sometimes humans choose to live in the wrong one. And, you know, when you have wars, when you have mass violence, when you have mass unresolvable violent conflict, you do have to acknowledge that humanity has chosen to live in the wrong reality. It is never right to have wars. It's never right to have massacres. It is never right to have
If
deaths by
somebody,
violence. It never is.
if somebody
Yeah.
smacks you in the face and then punches you in the stomach and then kicks you, do you say thank you very much? No, you fight back. You're like, how
Yeah.
dare you do that to me? Imagine a million people. A million people are gonna, that's
But I
war.
think what you're saying right now is exactly happening in some parts of the world
Of
on a
course,
daily
it's always
basis.
going to happen.
But that is the wrong choice that has been made to be in
But
that
we're humans.
realm.
This is the human. I don't know. I think this is that frail human condition that we are so proud. Our lives mean so much to us. Our wives, our children, our neighbors mean so much to us that we protect them. How dare you do that to me? Now, it can be
But that's a
perverse.
mistake. That's
It
a
can be
mistake.
perverse.
Going to one
But
extreme, that's a mistaken extreme. Yeah.
Well, we also, not everybody is there. Some people have fought and they've stopped fighting. They've said, this is not
right.
and they've
Yes.
healed. And we
Yes.
also, we
But
don't.
they have nothing to lose.
Mm,
They
Well,
have
they have
nothing to lose.
superior insight. They have superior insight. They have a superior insight that they have nothing to lose. You know, that just takes some.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm not saying yes. Again, this is faith. I don't know. I don't
Mhm.
know. I've never felt that because I get angry.
mhm.
Uh-oh.
And I understand what anger is. I don't act it out.
Okay.
I don't act it out, but I get angry. And I'm like, how
Mhm.
dare you? How dare
Yeah.
I've seen people do odd things and I wonder what's wrong with them. I mean, like, I mean, it's something very simple. I get angry. I go to the food store.
Very real
I have
though.
a card. I get my card, I go to the store, I come out, I get my card to the car, I don't leave it there. I bring it back.
Mhm.
I see people who don't bring it back, and then I
Mhm.
get angry, and I want to confront them. And I'm like, nah, not today.
Oh,
Not
oh, I
today.
see the type you are. I can see.
That,
Oh.
that's the, well, when we're responsible, we can be extremely happy as long as we're responsible for ourselves. But being responsible for yourself means not being responsible for others. So you can't, I mean, you just make yourself miserable and maybe bring a lot onto yourself if you go and fight everybody who's not contributing to society. But if it makes enough difference to us, then our responsibility may go to bringing that person's cart back for us because it's so important to us and it's not important to them. And then that's, where responsibility goes to, but what we can't control is them bringing back their own cart unless we want to take the responsibility to
Imagine
nurture them and
imagine what happens when nobody brings their card back. We've got chaos.
or
What
they hire somebody else to do it. There's
well, here,
always
the issue is, the problem is when you get to a point of utter chaos, when you break people down so that they have no more identity, they don't have options.
yeah.
They
That's war. Yeah.
And
That's when you fight for survival. That's when you fight for your
that's what
survival.
happens. You fed them a bunch of crap. You've broken them down.
Right.
Mhm.
We ultimately
they do-
realize that why are we fighting over the carts and this is, and I am making something out of what you said, but
That's
this is
exactly that.
exactly
That
what
was
goes,
why I said that.
yeah, yeah.
I said that
That's
because
why
it's so absurd. But the point is, it happens.
Yeah.
it does happen.
It's like,
And
what are
suddenly,
you fighting?
and we need to maintain what is ourself, or what is that we love. So we suddenly put all the responsibility into protecting what we love, and we're fighting.
We're fighting. Yes. We're
It
fighting over
does.
our mother country. We're fighting over our, the right to freedoms. We're fighting.
There's
These
an ethnocentricity to that, which is it's past egocentricity when we're just fighting for ourselves, and there's an ethnocentricity in which we're fighting
But you
for
can have
our
big fights
people.
within the same, you can have,
You
this again,
can.
I don't want, I hate to say this
Try.
if people don't agree, but I'm going to say it. If you look, the term ethnocentricity presumes you've got an ethnicity that you identify, that you label. Because I don't believe that there is, this again is me personally speaking, since we're having a personal discussion, not a political discussion, right? I don't believe there are different ethnicities. I believe humanity is just one big united whole.
biology.
But people
And you start
do
labeling it
identify
by,
with either a peer group or an ethnic group, and this
yeah,
is
that's a label.
makes
That's a
us
label. You say
put up
that's
things
mine. Those are
that
my
are
people, right?
appealing to people to put up a wall. It makes no
Yes, you got
sense
it.
to
Yeah.
put up a wall, right?
Yeah.
But somehow in the United States that this has come up, that build
Well,
a wall.
listen, the
That's
Chinese put up a wall, the
and
Romans put up a wall, they've all put
exactly.
up walls.
They
Yeah.
don't do too well. They don't do too well with that. I mean, they
No,
don't.
well,
No,
how's that
it's
work? How's that work for us?
it's
I
a
don't
it's
know.
a
We're still here, right?
very
But we're still fighting.
it's a very silly idea, but it's the same
Yeah.
thing as putting up the walls.
Well,
And
here's the other thing. I mean, we're not talking about destruction, self-destruction, more along the lines of human destruction. But oh gosh, the human destruction, and I blew the thought right out of my head. Oh,
There you go. Human destruction. Well, yeah.
what I was going to say is that, globalism. So if we go to globalism, which is like at some level, that's a terrific idea. It should be a global world and blah, 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 blah.
world centricity. Yeah.
That's political. That's
Right.
political. Yeah.
It's a beautiful thought, but that means that we lose everything about ourselves. We lose all our traditions. We're again that secular, dry, the whole world thing. So humanity is a very fragile existence.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
what's good is also bad. And sometimes what is very good is very bad.
And that's
Well,
why,
to have a
who knows
global,
who's good, what's good and what's bad. It comes around to being where we're aligned
Like,
to.
dancing, you've got some sort of a festival and you're doing some kind of traditional dance and you're all full of the goodness and all of that, but then there's the other dance. Those other people, they do that other, and it's the other.
Right.
So, it's like that great feeling that you feel so connected and suddenly is disconnecting you from the other.
but that's because you stop floating. I mean, in order to have a really global society that's really humanly global, each of those billions, trillions of humans involved in it has to be guided by their own indestructible higher self, each one of them.
Higher self.
That's how it's going to work. That's how it's going to work. Because you can all float together. It's feasible. It's doable. It has happened. But there has to be that compassion, that unifying flowing drive. It can't be at all. Like what, like doing your own dance and then you're realizing, okay, that's a different dance. That's not my dance. That's a different culture. That's not my culture. No, because that you're in the wrong slot, right? You stop flowing. You got to keep flowing at all times, you know, and
We're talking
yeah,
about how we come together, and in
yeah,
the we do have to bring this to a close for this
yes,
discussion, but when we are when we're actually um when we talk about the idea of self-destruction, what we've really pulled out in this conversation is how we come together, how we have self, and what and the barriers to that from being
yes.
together. And we haven't quite gotten to how do we rise from the self-destruction. What do we So I'd love to actually have a part two to this discussion, and go on, right? And talk about
I don't know the answers. I don't know how to rise from that.
we don't necessarily, or are we rising? Are we rising from different, there are different places in which we
Lydia, there is plenty of
yes,
rising.
well, I'm asking a rhetorical question.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Joy just got a husky, and there's a way in which that there's a reason for that, and there's also a rising to that, and we rise and we fall, and we rise and we fall, but we haven't really talked about that yet, except in a very big global sense. So
Okay,
yeah, I would love to come back and have a
sure.
part two to this, and
I'm with me.
we'll see how many chapters there are, but
I'm gonna have to go back and read all about Nirvana and let you know what I come up with.
Oh
right,
yeah,
right.
But I was very
mine won't be
disappointed
about
when I
Nirvana.
realized
I'm different. Yeah,
You can
yeah.
you can read Homer's The Odyssey as well. And
Mm,
the
yes.
the point is that when I went all the way, I was scanning this really long document. I was like, I've got to get to the end. So I got to the end and I was like, oh, Nirvana, that's what I want to read about, because I never understood what Nirvana meant. And then I read it and I was like, what? It's the end? What? And I'm like, wait, I don't understand. Let me go back. I'm like, I thought I was this like Jewish Buddha person. And suddenly I'm like, the end? What does that mean? And how can you explain that? So I would like, I might go back and see if I could do some Nirvana study research.
All
I'll
right.
do some more quantum physics, quantum mechanics reflecting, and I'll let you know. If you,
Okay.
yeah, I'm up for it.
All right. So this has been a great discussion, and we have to let these people go, and we have to go and do the things and eat the things, and
Oh yeah.
all the things
Uh,
that people do, walk the dogs. Um,
Go to
so
our audio production, yeah, which we should have done in the early 90s if we would have risen from
No,
self-destruction
no,
then.
it's meant that you're doing it now.
that's
Oh,
right. Yeah,
okay.
you don't have to. It's a
The
different
opportunity was now.
bird.
Okay. All right. Oh, I believe you, Faith. Faith, I'll believe you. Okay.
The opportunity is now.
The
Okay.
opportunity, obviously, this is the only opportunity you have right now anyway. So might as well be in the
This is
present
funny.
and
Yeah.
embrace it. All right.
Mhm.
I appreciate you, and I will see you the next time.
Yes.
Thank
Part
you.
two.
Part
Pleasure.
two.
Yes.
Thank you, Maria.
Oh,
Hello again, and thank you for joining us for that intimate discussion of rising from self-destruction in the both the global and the local sense. We went, and I hope you'll join us for a second round of this. We will have a sequel to this discussion, and you'll get to know when it is when you subscribe to The Joyful Path and the Tuesday Telecast. So if you liked this, please hit like and If you would like to know more about what's coming up, we have things coming up with having the education conversation with teachers who are have risen their own self-awareness and have risen to the joyful path and are lifting that for students everywhere. We have a discussion of people who have not fit in and have found a way to make everybody comfortable and realize that we all belong, and so many more conversations. So I hope you'll join us. And so hit like, gently push the subscribe button for all of those notifications and hit the bell. I'll see you next week.